What's up, everybody? I just got done with a little workout, got changed. I'm feeling good. Super sore, dude. Like, I hit chest and it was a brutal day, but we feel really good. We feel pumped up. Yeah, we're gonna go inside, and today is day one of the boot camp video. So we're gonna be talking about how to stop saying "how are you" and what phrases to say instead. Because in English, there's about 1,000 different ways to say the same thing, and most of the time, your classic phrase is overused, and so most people don't say it as much in most settings, or it's just kind of cliche. But there's 1,000 different ways to say it, so we're gonna go over what those things are, because we want you to speak naturally in English. So stick with us, please. Got a lot of great content coming up for you guys. So I'm gonna hop on inside, and yeah, we're gonna get into this. So peace. What's up, guys? And we are back with day one. So I just got back inside, so we're gonna hop right into it. This is stop saying "how are you" and the replacements to say instead. The reason for this is because, if I'm being honest with you, right? "How are you" is more of like a cliche phrase people say. They say it a lot, but it's more of like a conversation filler, and unfortunately, it's a really bad one. Like, just full disclosure, a lot of people say it, and normally when you say it in a conversation, the conversation kind of dies. There's like cliche responses people will say. They're not necessarily wanting the conversation to die, but like it's just there's no way to respond to it normally. So you can say it, especially if you're trying to get a conversation filler, but there's a lot of better ways to communicate that don't sound so like flat, so dry. A lot of people just say it as like a courtesy in a way, and then there's certain ways people will respond to it that are like kind of, like I said, cliche, kind of like a courteous way, and it's never really actually, most of the time people aren't really telling you like your life story and whatnot. There's just 1,000 different ways, better ways to say this, and so we're gonna hop right into those. So first, what's good? What's good? That's a good way to say it, because it still is the same principle of like, just you get into a conversation, you're like, what's good? Basically, you're involving yourself in the conversation, you're talking to somebody, good way to start out a conversation. It's kind of the same principle as "how are you?" It's the same meaning basically, but at the same time, it sounds more like informal, natural, more slangy. It's more of a less dry way to just enter the conversation, because people be like, "Oh yeah, what's up?" So it's more of a, I don't know, it's more of a friendly way to enter a conversation. It definitely sounds more natural, and it's more likely to get a better result, right? It sounds more normal thing for people to say every day. Technically speaking, "how are you?" you're kind of like asking more deeply like how they are, like if they're doing good or whatnot. But like I say, a lot of people don't use it like that. In a lot of contexts, it doesn't mean that. It actually just means it's like a cliche way to enter a conversation or whatnot. Just a way to get yourself involved in a conversation, or just a way to fill the conversation. So these are other ways you can fill that with a different phrase that's going to sound better and more natural and more friendly. When I say friendly, I'm not saying "how are you" is unfriendly. It's not, like I say, it's dry. You want more, casual, poppy phrases that are going to just come off differently. So what's up, or sup, what's up, we've talked about that before. Those different phrases is a great way to replace them. I'm not going to go too much into that because we've already talked about it, but essentially, if you want to know more, you can go check out our previous videos. But, they mean the same thing, but at the same time, it's a good way to enter conversation. Super casual, super informal, everybody uses it, and it's a great way. What's happening? So that's kind of the same way, same thing. It's a little bit less commonly used, but some would argue that means it's less overused, essentially. So that's a good phrase. What's happening means the same thing. That's also an informal setting kind of thing, but, maybe a tad less informal, but at the same time pretty informal. So you really just use it with your friends and whatnot, or interacting with everyday people. It's a good way to enter a conversation. Like I say, it sounds more natural than "how are you?" just walking up. It's also a good way to start a conversation, like over text or whatnot. It sounds so much better than just popping in and being like, "how are you?" Because if you say "how are you?" they're gonna be like, "good, you." Then you'd be like, "good." That's the end of the conversation. There's nothing more to it. There's no way to just put this. It's just, that's how the conversation goes. You start with "how are you?" So that's a good one. You straight. So this is where it gets interesting, because like I said, a lot of times it's used, "how are you?" would be used as like a conversation filler. However, there are exceptions to that. When you are actually asking someone how they are in a setting where it's like a close friend or someone you know for a while, you know they're going through something, like when you ask them how they are, you basically are actually trying to get an actual answer. Like, are you struggling? How you been doing? You want more of an in-depth answer. They talk about, oh yeah, you know, the last few weeks have been rough, so on and so forth. They go in depth. That's kind of like, especially if you're close to that person, that's the setting you would use that in, where you're actually asking how they are. However, if you don't want it to be so deep and like endearing, you can ask, like, maybe, you know, it's one of your dude friends, you're not trying to sound quite the same way, but you're also trying to figure out if they're good. You can definitely use other phrases, like you straight sounds the same thing. You know, someone looks like they're, you know, one of your buddies looks like he's down, you'd be like, hey, you straight? Simple as that. You know, it sounds more chill, it's more slangy, it doesn't sound so cliche and, like I say, endearing as much, but at the same time, you are actually trying to get a legitimate answer. Hey, you doing okay? But I would not necessarily use that in the most, like, terrible of circumstances. Like, if someone's dog just died, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I would actually still go say, how are you? But for the most part, you straight, a good filler response for that. Some people would say things like, what's the play? Now, this is interesting. This isn't really synonymous with how are you, but at the same time, it's like in that same classification, like I've talked about, of just like phrases you say when you first enter a conversation. It's just an intro, essentially. What's the play is a little bit less like that. That's more of a phrase that you would use when you are like basically just trying to figure out what the plan is, right? So you're like, what are we gonna do today? We're gonna go bowling, we're gonna go golf. You'd be like, hey, what's the play? You know, and they're like, oh no, we're just grabbing food, that kind of thing. What's poppin' is another phrase. I don't think that's used as much anymore. It's kind of, can be a little corny, but I mean, some people will say it still, you know. I've heard it in rap songs, but it's not quite something I would use, but that is a phrase you have in your arsenal, I guess. It means the same thing. What's going on? What's poppin'? What's happening? How's it going? The one other one was you good, right? So you good is the same exact thing as how are you, except you're more specifically asking. It's the same thing as like you straight, basically. Seeing how someone's doing, you're actually trying to get a response. Well, it sounds better than just like how are you, like I said. How you doing kind of sounds better too. It's the same principle, same concept, but that's just another phrase you have in your arsenal. Another way to not just say how are you. So that is that's essentially all the ones we have for today. The next week, day 2 is going to be talking about how to respond to how are you. And instead of just saying the same cliche things that I just mentioned people say, we'll go over what those are. We'll go over not to say them. We'll go over what context you're supposed to say actual phrases, like certain things, just to, you know, keep the conversation going, and what context you're actually supposed to basically tell them your life story and answer honestly. So that's what we'll go over next week. Like I say, thank you so much for watching this video. I'm really excited about this series. This was day number 1. Next week, I'm probably going to pull some comments of your guys as well and talk about those as well. Or next video, whenever we get that out, I guess. But pull some of your comments, talk about that as well. So let me know if you have any questions, any comments, any ideas, anything in the video. I'd love to see those. I'd love to respond, and you might make the cut of the video. So make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Once again, thank you so much for all the support we've been getting. We really, really do appreciate it. And like I said, got nothing for love for you guys. So thank you so much. Yeah, see you in the next one. Peace.